After some very stormy weather, things were finally clearing up and we'd arrived in Ajaccio, which is the capital of Corsica. The plan was to keep following the coast down to Bonifacio and visit as many beaches as possible along the way. First up, we took a day to visit Ajaccio. It's a really beautiful city and the old parts are really fun to explore. As we were just walking around, we walked straight past Napoleon's old gaff. I quickly realised I knew absolutely nothing about Napoleon or Corsica or its history or anything really, but that was fine with me. There was even a little tiny beach that was being taken full advantage of. I took a little dip to cool off and then had some time chilling reading by the sea, which is honestly one of my favourite things to do. There were even some topless sunbathers. Now, I can't imagine growing up in a city just being a wee guy cutting about and seeing boobs on the beach. I realise how immature this is, but honestly, imagine going to like the Clyde and seeing people semi-naked. It just doesn't really feel like a real thing. You do get people walking about Glasgow topless, but usually they're the kind of people you want to avoid. We sussed out the trains and bought tickets so that the next day we could do a little round trip to Corte. I wasn't really that fussed about visiting it, but since we weren't going to be cycling up that way because it was right in the middle of the mountains in the middle of the island, it made sense to take advantage of the train. The journey was pretty nice, although a little bit bumpy, and visiting the town was absolutely class. It's nestled right in a sort of mountain range and very, very picturesque. It was totally worth it. We walked about, had some beers, and caught a little bit of the World Cup as well. We even managed to visit a museum which has some very suspect displays of old religious clothes. Yeesh. The next day we got off to a bit of a bad start as we discovered that a Queen Anne had actually settled in Lily's frame bag. It took a while to clear them out and Lily was not impressed. We were aiming for Cupabia, which is a great beach and a campsite on it. The riding was good fun, but it was super steep and really, really hot. I didn't mind that much, but it was definitely some of the tougher cycling we'd done so far on the trip. We got to a really nice summit and we enjoyed the views. You can see us here acting cool and having a nice time, but actually right next to these rocks, someone had clearly taken a massive shit and it was absolutely stinking. It just goes to show that sometimes there's a lot more going on behind the picture. Unfortunately though, the campsite at Cupabia Beach was total trash. It cost €30 for a pitch, which was honestly the most expensive place we stayed in the whole trip. The ground was all torn up with tractors and there were swarms of mosquitoes everywhere. We had to eat our dinner in the tent. They also had these signs saying that you had to pay tons for super special toilet paper because apparently normal toilet paper would do something weird to their pipes. It was a total scam and honestly I hope I wrecked their plumbing because they were honestly just at it. Totally at it. There was a plus though that it had a nice bar and they were showing the Brazil-Switzerland game for the World Cup, so I definitely enjoyed that. We also had a great time chilling at the beach, so overall it wasn't so bad, but definitely more and more places were becoming more touristy and just catering for people who will pay through the teeth for anything. Back on the road we were really finding our groove though. For all the warnings about how tough the cycling was going to be, we were feeling super fit and managing the climbs without too much bother. We weren't quite sure where we were going to be staying that night, but we had a great day eating lunch at the beach at Propriano and then a very, very chilled out coffee break at Sartène as we made our way from the coast into the hills a little bit. Coming down the other side, we eventually passed the sign for Camping La Ferme. It was actually really nice, although a bit basic. It was so much cheaper than the one we stayed the night before, but 100% better. They sold beers and we had a nice chill night talking to some other French tourers. Since we were going in opposite directions, we shared recommendations for places to visit, beaches and what sections were really tough to cycle. The only downside though was that the campsite and the shower blocks were swarming with some very, very big hairy caterpillars, which makes for quite a stressful shower. I thought I took photos of them, but I think I was just pure stressed out by them, so unfortunately you'll just have to leave it to your imagination. On the other cyclist recommendations, we set out super early and we took a little detour to visit Roccapina Beach. It was honestly one of the nicest beaches we'd ever been to, definitely one of the highlights of Corsica. It wasn't too busy because we got there dead early. There's not really much to say here, the visuals just speak for themselves. Sadly though, we couldn't spend the whole day there, so we set off again towards Bonifacio. We even made good time even though we'd spent ages at the beach. The city is amazing. It's this mad fort on top of a hill and a very nice harbour. Very, very swanky yachts kicking about as well. It was definitely starting to feel super touristy, which is understandable, but just because of how beautiful everything is. A lot of people will take the ferry from Bastia, then zoom down the relatively flat east side, and then start visiting this area and all the beaches. It was definitely starting to have a different vibe to the more secluded and rural northwestern parts of the island. The French couple had also told us about a not too expensive campsite, which was near a very good pizzeria on the beach. I was a bit sceptical because of all the terrible pizzas we'd had in France, but it turned out to be pretty much the best pizza we'd have on the trip. Top 5 at least. The beach bar also helped a lot too. Drinking beers and watching a sunset, having pizza, these are definitely the good times. The next day we spent the morning visiting Bonifacio. When you think about it, it's so sketchy just leaving your bikes in the middle of a city, tied up with all your stuff. Literally all your belongings are tied to this bike. But if you're not going to take the risk and actually visit and tour places, then it kind of defeats the purpose of going bike touring. Obviously it's easy for me to say that because nothing went wrong, but anyway, it was definitely worth it. The city was cool, but it was proper heaving. We walked about, chilled out, and then made our way back down to the harbour, where we made some sandwiches and ate them before setting off again. When we were eating our lunch, there was this American mother and daughter, and weirdly, there was all these locusts also flying about, sort of coming into the harbour. The daughter was pure freaking out, like, "Mom, help me! Please don't leave me here!" She was like screaming and crying, and me and Lily were just sort of sitting there eating our sandwiches, watching, being like, what is going on here? It was actually quite annoying because the locusts were quite scary, but anyway. The next stop was Vecchio. The road was pretty straight and not too interesting, so it didn't take us very long. The plan was that we'd stay there for a couple of nights, spend one more day at the beach, and then start heading inland a bit towards Zonza, so that we'd miss out a big section of the main busy road towards Bastia, which would then conclude our time in Corsica. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video of us cycling in Corsica. Again, if you have any questions about the routes or some of the areas we visited, please leave us a comment below, and if you haven't already subscribed, hit that subscribe button and make sure you don't miss the next episode of these cycling videos next week.